The rifle barrel stopped 2 inches from his chest. Mirabelle Prescott held the Winchester steady, her finger resting just outside the trigger guard, her breath coming fast in the cold February air. The man on the porch steps froze, his expensive coat and polished boots marking him as everything Iron Prairie pretended to respect. Behind her, the door to the ranch house stood open, lamplight spilling across weathered boards. She had walked into her father's parlor 10 minutes ago and found them shaking hands over a glass of whiskey. Her father, pale and sweating despite the winter chill. This stranger, smiling like he had just purchased a prize mare. The word engagement had fallen between them, like a stone down a well. Mirabelle had turned without a word, walked to the gun rack, and loaded the rifle her brother taught her to shoot when she was 12. Now the stranger stood on the threshold of Highwind Ranch, with his hands raised and his smile gone. "You are making a mistake, miss," he said. His voice carried the smooth certainty of a man who had never been refused. Mirabelle did not lower the rifle. "You can walk to your horse, or I can shoot your hat off and you can run. Your choice." The wind gusted hard, pulling strands of auburn hair loose from the pins at her neck. Dust swirled across the yard. Somewhere beyond the barn, a horse stamped and blew. Then a shadow moved at the edge of the lamplight. A second man stepped into view from the side of the house. Tall, lean, work-worn. Dark coat over plain shirt and suspenders. Short beard shadowing a face that gave nothing away. Mirabelle recognized him instantly. Mercer Keene, ranch hand. Quiet. Kept to himself. Worked the fence lines and the stock pens, and never said more than 3 words, unless directly asked. He stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked up at the stranger. Then he looked at Mirabelle. His eyes were dark and steady, and something in them made her pulse kick hard against her ribs. "Seems like the lady made her position clear," Mercer said. His voice was low, rough-edged, deliberate. The stranger turned, his face flushing. "This is a private matter." Mercer did not move. "Sounds public enough to me." Mirabelle kept the rifle trained. Her father appeared in the doorway behind her, his face red, his hands shaking. "Mirabelle, put that down. This is business. This is how we save the ranch." She did not turn. "I am not for sale." Her father's voice cracked. "You do not understand what we owe, what they will take if we do not settle this." "Then sell the land," Mirabelle said. "Sell the cattle. Sell your boots. But you will not sell me." The stranger straightened his coat, his composure returning. "Miss Prescott, your father has signed a contract. You are formally engaged. The arrangements are made. The church is reserved. You can make this easy, or you can make it a scandal. But the outcome is the same." Mercer shifted his weight. "If she says no, it is no." The stranger turned on him. "You are a hired hand. This does not concern you." Mercer's expression did not change, but his stillness took on an edge. "I work this ranch. I know what keeps it running. And it is not you." The wind picked up again, colder now, carrying the scent of distant rain. The stranger glanced between Mirabelle and Mercer, his jaw tight. Then he stepped down off the porch, moving carefully past Mercer, and walked toward the hitching post where his horse waited. He swung into the saddle with practiced ease and looked back. "This is not over," he said. "The contract stands. I will return with the sheriff if necessary. He turned the horse and rode into the gathering dusk. Mirabelle lowered the rifle slowly, her arms trembling. Her father disappeared back into the house without a word. The door slammed. Mercer stood in the yard, his hands loose at his sides, his gaze on the horizon where the stranger had vanished. Then he looked at Mirabelle. "You all right?" She nodded, though her throat felt tight. "I did not know he was coming." Mercer climbed the steps and stopped a careful distance away. "Contracts like that do not hold if you do not sign." "I did not sign anything." "Then it is paper and air." He paused. "But men like that do not quit easy." Mirabelle set the rifle against the porch rail and wrapped her arms around herself. The cold bit through her coat. "What am I supposed to do?" Mercer studied her for a long moment. His face was unreadable, but something in his stillness felt solid, anchored. "Whatever you decide," he said. "But you should know you are not alone in it." The words landed quiet and certain. Mirabelle met his eyes and felt something shift beneath her ribs, unfamiliar and unsettling. "Why did you step in?" Mercer glanced toward the barn, then back. "Because it was wrong. That's simple. No flourish, no demand for gratitude." He turned and walked back toward the bunkhouse, his coat snapping in the wind. Mirabelle watched until the shadows swallowed him. Inside, her father sat slumped at the kitchen table, a bottle in front of him. Mirabelle hung the rifle on its pegs and stood in the doorway. "How much do you owe?" she asked. He did not look up. "More than the ranch is worth." "To who?" "Men in Cheyenne. The kind who do not wait. And you thought selling me would fix it." He flinched. "It is not selling. It is a marriage arrangement. Respectable families do it all the time. Respectable families do not hold a gun on the groom." Her father finally met her eyes. "You do not understand what will happen if I do not pay. They will take everything. The land, the stock, the house. You will have nothing." Mirabelle crossed her arms. "Then we will have nothing together. But I will not marry a stranger to cover your debts." He turned back to the bottle. "You are just like your mother. Stubborn to the point of ruin." Mirabelle left him there and climbed the narrow stairs to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared out the small window at the darkening prairie. The wind howled. Somewhere, a shutter banged loose. She thought about Mercer's voice. Steady, certain. "You are not alone in it." She did not sleep. The next morning, she saddled her horse before dawn and rode into Iron Prairie. The mail route would not wait, and neither would her questions. The post office sat on the edge of the main street, a narrow building with a peeling sign and a crooked front step. Inside, the postmaster sorted parcels with methodical precision. "Morning, Mirabelle," he said without looking up. 3 bags today. 1 for the northern homesteads, 2 for the mining camp." She hefted the bags into her saddlebags. "Any word from Cheyenne?" He glanced up, his eyes sharp beneath bushy brows. "What kind of word?" "About contracts. Legal arrangements." He set down his sorting knife. "You asking for yourself? Or for your father?" "Myself." He wiped his hands on his apron. If a contract is signed by only one party, it is not binding. If money changed hands, that is different. But a marriage arrangement without the bride's consent is not enforceable in this territory. Not legally. Mirabelle let out a breath she had not known she was holding. Thank you. But, he added, that does not stop a man from making trouble, especially if he has money and connections. She nodded and turned toward the door. The postmaster cleared his throat. Mirabelle, be careful. Men who buy what they want do not take kindly to being told no. She rode north into the wind. The sky pressed low and gray, heavy with the promise of snow. The northern homesteads were scattered across the high prairie, each one a lonely cluster of buildings against the endless horizon. She delivered letters, packages, a small crate of medicine. At each stop, she listened to the rhythm of ordinary life. A woman hanging laundry, a child chasing chickens, a man repairing a fence. By midday, the wind turned sharp and bitter. The first flakes fell, small and hard, stinging her face. She turned her horse toward the mining camp, a rough collection of tents and shacks clinging to the base of a rocky ridge. The miners greeted her with nods and rough thanks, their faces blackened with dust. One of them, a grizzled man with a missing tooth, handed her a folded note. For Mercer Keene at High Wind Ranch. Pay on delivery. Mirabelle took the note and tucked it into her coat. The man grinned. Tell him Dutch says hello. She rode back toward Iron Prairie as the snow thickened. The world turned white and close, the wind driving the flakes sideways. By the time she reached the edge of town, her fingers were numb, and her coat was caked with ice. She did not go home. She turned her horse toward the saloon. The saloon was warm and loud, thick with smoke and the smell of whiskey. Mirabelle pushed through the door and heads turned. Women did not frequent saloons unless they worked there, and everyone in Iron Prairie knew Mirabelle Prescott carried mail, not favors. She walked to the bar. The bartender, a broad man with a scar across his temple, raised an eyebrow. Miss Prescott, you lost? I need information. He wiped a glass with deliberate slowness. What kind? The kind about contracts and debts and men from Cheyenne. The room quieted. The bartender set down the glass. That is dangerous information. I am already in danger. He studied her for a long moment, then gestured toward a back table. Sit. I will bring coffee, she said. The warmth of the room seeped into her bones, painful and welcome. The bartender returned with a tin cup and sat across from her. Your father owes $5,000 to a man named Calloway. Calloway owns half the territory and wants the other half. He does not lend money out of kindness. Mirabelle wrapped her hands around the cup. And the man who came to the ranch? Calloway's associate. Name is Denton. He has a reputation for collecting debts one way or another. And the marriage arrangement? The bartender leaned back. Denton wants land. Your father's ranch borders a rail line survey route. If Denton marries you, he gets the ranch when your father defaults. Clean and legal. Mirabelle's stomach turned. So it was never about me. It is always about land, miss. People are just the means. She drank the coffee. It was bitter and scalding. What happens if I refuse? The bartender's expression darkened. Calloway does not lose. If Denton cannot have the ranch through marriage, he will have it through foreclosure. And your father will be lucky if all he loses is the land. Mirabelle set down the cup. Thank you. She stood and walked back into the snow. The storm had worsened. The wind screamed. Visibility dropped to a few feet. She mounted her horse and turned toward home. But the cold was brutal now, cutting through her coat like knives. Halfway back, her horse stumbled. Mirabelle dismounted and checked the animal's leg. No injury, but the mare was exhausted, her sides heaving. Mirabelle looked around. Nothing but white. No landmarks. No trail. She had ridden this route 100 times. But in a blizzard, the prairie became a featureless void. She pulled her scarf over her face and led the horse forward, one step at a time. The cold gnawed at her bones. Her hands lost feeling. Her thoughts slowed. Then a shape loomed out of the white. A horse. A rider. Mercer. He dismounted and grabbed her shoulders. "What are you doing out here?" "Mail route," she said, her voice cracking. Got turned around. He did not waste time on questions. He took her horse's reins and swung into his saddle, then reached down and pulled her up behind him. "Hold on." She wrapped her arms around his waist and pressed her face against his back. He was solid and warm and steady. He turned his horse and rode with unerring precision, as if he could see through the storm. 20 minutes later, a building emerged. Not Highwind Ranch. A line shack, small and rough, used by ranch hands during roundup. Mercer dismounted and helped her down, then led both horses into a lean-to shelter attached to the side. Inside the shack, he lit a lantern and started a fire in the iron stove. Mirabelle sank onto a wooden bench, shaking uncontrollably. Mercer pulled a blanket from a trunk and wrapped it around her shoulders, then crouched in front of the stove, feeding it wood until the flames roared. "You should not have been out there," he said. "I had deliveries. In a blizzard? I did not know it would get this bad." He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You could have died." She met his eyes. Would that have mattered? His jaw tightened. Yes. The word hung between them, simple and absolute. Mirabelle pulled the blanket tighter. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled. "Why did you come looking for me?" she asked. Mercer sat back on his heels, saw the storm coming. "Knew you were still out. You did not have to." He looked at her directly. "Yes, I did." The silence stretched. Mirabelle pulled the note from her coat pocket and held it out. "This is for you. From Dutch at the mining camp." Mercer took the note and unfolded it. His face went still. "Bad news?" she asked. He folded it again and tucked it into his shirt. "Just a reminder." "Of what?" He did not answer. Instead, he stood and poured water from a canteen into a battered tin pot. Set it on the stove. When it boiled, he made weak coffee and handed her a cup. "You should know," she said, "that the man who came to the ranch works for someone named Calloway. He wants the land, not me." Mercer sat on the opposite bench, his hands wrapped around his own cup. "I know who Calloway is." "You do?" He nodded. "Calloway owns half the freight lines in the territory, and a lot of the law." Mirabelle's chest tightened. "So even if I refuse, he will take the ranch anyway." "Probably." "Then what am I fighting for?" Mercer looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "Your choice. That is always worth fighting for." She wanted to believe him. But the weight of the debt, the contract, the storm, pressed down like stones. What if my choice does not matter? She asked quietly. Mercer leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. It matters. Even if you lose, it matters that you chose. The firelight flickered across his face, catching the line of his jaw, the shadow of his beard. Mirabelle studied him. He was not handsome in the polished way Denton was. He was rough-edged and weather-worn, built for hard work and harder winters. But there was something in him that felt unshakable. "Why do you care?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Because you deserve better than being sold." The honesty of it stole her breath. She set down her cup, her hand still trembling. "I do not even know you." Mercer's mouth curved, just slightly. "Not much to know." "I doubt that." He looked away, into the fire. Everyone has things they would rather leave buried. Like what? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I worked for Calloway once. 3 years ago. Freight security. I saw what he does to people who get in his way." Mirabelle's pulse quickened. "And you left?" "I did not like what I was becoming." "What were you becoming?" He met her eyes again. The kind of man who does not step in when someone needs help. The wind rattled the shack. Snow hissed against the window. The fire crackled. "That is why you came to the porch," Mirabelle said. "Not just because it was wrong. Because you know what men like Denton do." Mercer nodded slowly. "And I know Calloway will not stop. If you humiliate Denton, Calloway will make an example of you. And your father. So what do I do?" Mercer stood and moved to the window, looking out at the white nothing beyond. "You run, or you fight. There is no middle ground." Mirabelle joined him at the window. Her reflection stared back, pale and determined. "I am tired of running." "Then you fight. But you do not fight alone." She turned to look at him. "Are you offering to help?" He looked down at her, and for the first time, something vulnerable flickered in his expression. "I already decided to." "Why?" "Because," he said quietly, "you are worth it." The words landed like a match on kindling. Mirabelle's breath caught. The space between them shrank, charged and dangerous. She could feel the heat of him, the solidity. The storm raged outside, but inside the shack, the air felt still and electric. Mercer stepped back, breaking the moment. "Storm should pass by morning. We will ride back at first light." Mirabelle nodded, though her heart still hammered. She returned to the bench and wrapped the blanket tighter. Mercer added more wood to the fire and settled on the opposite side, his back against the wall. She watched him in the firelight. His face was hard, carved by wind and work, but his eyes held something gentler. She thought about his hands, rough and capable, pulling her onto his horse. She thought about his voice, steady and certain. "You are not alone." She did not know when she fell asleep, but when she woke, the fire had burned low, and Mercer was still awake, watching the window. By dawn, the storm had passed. The world outside was blinding white, pristine and cold. Mercer saddled the horses, while Mirabelle stamped feeling back into her feet. They rode in silence, the snow crunching beneath the hooves. When they reached High Wind Ranch, her father was standing on the porch, his face haggard. Mirabelle dismounted and walked past him without a word. Inside, she stripped off her wet coat and built up the fire in the main room. Her father followed. "Where were you?" "Caught in the storm. Mercer found me." Her father glanced toward the window, where Mercer was leading the horses toward the barn. That boy is trouble. That boy saved my life. Her father sat heavily. Mirabelle, you need to be practical. Denton is coming back. And he is bringing the sheriff. Let him. You cannot fight this. Mirabelle turned on him. Watch me. Her father's face crumpled. I am trying to protect you. By selling me? He did not answer. Mirabelle left him there and climbed the stairs to her room. She changed into dry clothes, pinned her hair back, and sat at the small desk by the window. She pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. She wrote to the territorial governor. She wrote to the land office. She wrote to the judge in Cheyenne. She wrote out every detail of the arrangement, the debt, the coercion. She did not know if anyone would listen, but she would not go down without a fight. By midday, she had sealed the letters and tucked them into her saddlebag. She would mail them in Iron Prairie tomorrow. For now, she needed to think. She found Mercer in the barn, mending a bridle. He looked up when she entered, his hand stilling. Thank you, she said. For last night. He nodded. You would have done the same. I do not know if that is true. He set down the bridle. It is. She hesitated, then stepped closer. The barn was warm and dim, smelling of hay and leather. Mercer watched her, his expression guarded. I need to know something, she said. If this goes bad, if Calloway comes after me, will you still be here? Mercer stood slowly. His eyes were dark and steady. I will be here, even if it costs you. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch careful, deliberate. Even then, Mirabelle's pulse kicked hard. She could feel the roughness of his fingers, the warmth of his palm. She could see the way his jaw tightened, the way his gaze dropped to her mouth and then back to her eyes. You should not make promises like that, she said quietly. Too late. The air between them hummed. Mirabelle swayed forward, and Mercer closed the distance. His hand slid to the back of her neck, his thumb brushing her jaw. He kissed her, slow and sure, and the world tilted. She kissed him back, her hands gripping the front of his shirt. He tasted like coffee in cold air, solid and real. When they broke apart, her breath came fast, her heart racing. That was reckless, she whispered. Mercer's mouth curved. You held a rifle on a man yesterday. I think we are past reckless. She laughed, breathless and startled. Then, the barn door swung open. Her father stood in the doorway, his face pale. Denton is here. With the sheriff. Mirabelle pulled away from Mercer, her face burning. Mercer stepped in front of her, his posture shifting, protective. Her father looked between them, his expression tight. They are demanding to see you. Now, Mirabelle straightened her dress and walked past him, out into the cold, bright day. Denton stood in the yard, flanked by the sheriff, a thick man with a badge and a bored expression. Behind them, 2 hired men waited on horseback. Miss Prescott, Denton said, his voice smooth. I believe we have unfinished business. Mirabelle stopped at the edge of the porch. We have no business. The sheriff stepped forward. Miss, there's a signed contract. Your father agreed to the terms. That makes this a legal matter. I did not sign anything. The sheriff pulled a folded paper from his coat. Your father signed on your behalf as head of household. That is binding. Mirabelle's stomach dropped. She looked at her father. He would not meet her eyes. You signed for me? Her father's voice was barely a whisper. I had no choice. Denton smiled. So you see, Miss Prescott, this is settled. The engagement stands. The wedding is scheduled for next month. You can cooperate, or I can have the sheriff escort you to town for protective custody until you come to your senses. Mercer stepped off the porch. That contract is coercion. It will not hold. The sheriff turned to him. Who are you? Mercer Keene. Ranch hand. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. Keene. I know that name. You worked for Calloway. Mercer did not flinch. I did. Not anymore. The sheriff's expression hardened. Then you know what happens to people who interfere in Calloway's business. Mercer held his ground. I know what happens to people who do not stand up to him too. Denton's smile faded. This is your last warning, Keene. Walk away. Mercer looked at Mirabelle. She met his eyes and saw the question there. She could say the word, and he would back down. She could spare him. She turned to the sheriff. I will fight this contract in court. And I will file charges against Denton for coercion and fraud. The sheriff sighed. Miss, you are making this harder than it needs to be. Denton's face went cold. Sheriff, arrest her. Breach of contract and refusal to honor a legal agreement. The sheriff hesitated. That is a civil matter, not criminal. Denton stepped closer to the sheriff, his voice low. Calloway owns your boss. Do your job. The sheriff's jaw tightened. He pulled out a pair of iron cuffs. Miss Prescott, you are under arrest. Mirabelle's pulse roared. Mercer moved, fast and fluid, stepping between her and the sheriff. You are not taking her. The two hired men dismounted, their hands going to their belts. The yard went silent. Then a voice called from the road. Hold on. Everyone turned. A rider approached, a tall man in a long coat with a silver badge pinned to his chest. A federal marshal. He dismounted and walked into the yard, his gaze sweeping the scene. Someone want to tell me what is happening here? Denton recovered quickly. Marshal, this is a local matter. A breach of contract. The sheriff is handling it. The marshal looked at the sheriff. That true? The sheriff shifted. There is a signed agreement. The young lady is refusing to honor it. The marshal turned to Mirabelle. You signed this agreement? No, sir. Who did? My father. Without my knowledge or consent. The marshal looked at her father. That true? Her father nodded miserably. The marshal turned back to Denton. You are trying to enforce a marriage contract signed by someone other than the bride? Denton's voice went hard. It is legal, under territorial law. The marshal's expression did not change. It is legal if the person consents. She does not. So the contract is void. Denton's face flushed. Calloway will hear about this. The marshal stepped closer. Calloway does not outrank federal law. And I am here investigating reports of coerced contracts and land fraud. So, if you have something to say it now. Denton glanced at the sheriff, then at his hired men. Then he turned and mounted his horse. This is not over. He rode out, his men following. The sheriff looked at the marshal. then at Mirabel, then walked to his horse without a word. The marshal watched them go, then turned to Mirabel. "You all right, miss?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you." He tipped his hat. "I will need a statement from you. And from anyone else who witnessed the arrangement." Mirabel nodded. Mercer stepped up beside her. "I can testify." The marshal studied him. "You are keen. Used to work for Calloway." Mercer met his gaze. "Yes, sir." The marshal's expression softened slightly. "Then you know what you are risking." "I do." The marshal nodded. "Good. We need men willing to stand up. Come to the federal office in Iron Prairie tomorrow. Both of you." He mounted and rode off. The yard emptied. Mirabel stood on the porch, shaking. Mercer touched her shoulder lightly. "You all right?" She turned and looked at him. "I do not know." Her father climbed the steps slowly. "Mirabel, I am sorry. I thought I was protecting you." She did not answer. She walked past him into the house and shut the door. That night, Mirabel could not sleep. She sat by the window and watched the stars. The prairie stretched endless and silver under the moon. Somewhere out there, Denton was planning his next move. Somewhere, Calloway was pulling strings. She thought about the marshal's words. Federal law. Investigations. Testimony. It was a chance. A thin one, but real. She thought about Mercer. The way he had stepped between her and the sheriff without hesitation. The way his kiss had felt, certain and reckless. The way he looked at her, like she mattered more than safety. A soft knock on the door. Mirabel turned. Mercer stood in the hallway, his coat gone, his shirt sleeves rolled. "Could not sleep either?" she asked. He shook his head. "Wanted to make sure you were all right." She stood and crossed to him. "I keep thinking about what happens next." Mercer leaned against the doorframe. "Tomorrow, we talk to the marshal. After that, we see what Denton does. And if Calloway comes after us, then we deal with it." She studied his face. "You are not afraid." He smiled faintly. "I did not say that. But you are still here." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers rough and warm. "I told you." "I decided." Mirabel stepped closer. "Why did you really leave Calloway?" Mercer's expression turned somber. "Because I watched him destroy a family over a land dispute. He bought their debt, foreclosed, and had them evicted in the middle of winter. The mother died of pneumonia 3 weeks later. I realized I was helping him do that. So I walked away." "And he let you?" "No. I had to disappear for a while. Change my name. Stay low. But I could not keep running forever." Mirabel tightened her grip on his hand. "You changed your name?" He nodded. "Mercer Keene is not what I was born with." "What was?" He hesitated. "Does it matter?" She looked into his eyes. "Not to me." He exhaled slowly. "Then it does not matter." She leaned up and kissed him. Soft and deliberate. He kissed her back, his hands sliding to her waist, pulling her close. The kiss deepened, urgent and hungry. When they broke apart, her pulse hammered. "This is dangerous," she whispered. Mercer's voice was rough. "Everything worth doing is." They stood there, tangled in each other, the night pressing close around them. Then Mercer stepped back, his jaw tight. I should go. Stay. He looked at her, something raw in his eyes. If I stay, I am not leaving. Good. He kissed her again, slower this time, and the world narrowed to just them. The weight of the day, the fear, the uncertainty, all fell away. There was only this. Only now. Later, lying beside him in the narrow bed, Mirabel stared at the ceiling. His arm was warm around her, his breathing steady. She felt safer than she had in months. But safety was fragile, and morning would come too soon. What happens if the marshal cannot stop Calloway? She asked quietly. Mercer's voice rumbled against her shoulder. Then we leave. Head west. Start over somewhere he cannot reach. You would do that? He turned to look at her, his face serious. I would do anything to keep you safe. The words settled into her chest, solid and unshakable. She kissed him once more, then closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Morning came hard and bright. Mirabel woke to find Mercer already dressed, standing by the window. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. What is wrong? He turned. Rider coming. Fast. She dressed quickly and followed him downstairs. By the time they reached the porch, the rider had arrived. It was a boy from town, no more than 14. His face red from the cold. Miss Prescott, he gasped. Marshall sent me. You need to come to town. Now. Why? Denton filed a complaint. Says you stole money from him. Marshall wants your statement before the circuit judge arrives this afternoon. Mirabel's blood went cold. I never took anything from him. The boy shrugged. Marshall said come quick, or they will issue a warrant. Mercer grabbed his coat. I am coming with you. They rode hard into Iron Prairie. The town was buzzing. People clustered on the boardwalk, whispering. The federal office was a small building near the bank. Inside, the marshal sat behind a desk covered in papers. Miss Prescott. Keen. Sit. They sat. The marshal leaned back in his chair. Denton claims you took $500 from his coat pocket the night you held the rifle on him. Says it was payment for your father's debt. Mirabel's hands clenched. That is a lie. I never touched his coat. The marshal nodded. I figured. But he filed the complaint, and the circuit judge is here today. If we do not address it now, it becomes a warrant. So we are going to court. Mirabel's stomach twisted. How do I prove I did not take something that does not exist? The marshal looked at Mercer. You were there. What did you see? Mercer spoke calmly. I saw Miss Prescott hold a rifle on Denton. I saw her tell him to leave. I did not see her go near him or his horse. The marshal made a note. Good. We will need your father to testify too. Mirabel hesitated. He may not. The marshal's gaze sharpened. Why not? Because he is the one who signed the contract. He is afraid of Calloway. The marshal stood. Then we make him more afraid of perjury. Let us go. They walked to the courthouse, a plain wooden building with a crooked steeple. Inside, the room was packed. Denton sat at the front with a lawyer, his expression smug. The judge, a silver-haired man with tired eyes, took his seat. Case of Denton versus Prescott. Charge of theft. Proceed. Denton's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client was conducting legitimate business at the Prescott Ranch when Miss Prescott threatened him with a firearm and stole $500 from his person. We have a signed affidavit from Mr. Denton detailing the event. The judge looked at Mirabel. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. I never touched him or his belongings. The judge gestured. Marshal, present your evidence. The marshal called Mercer to the stand. Mercer recounted the night calmly, precisely. He described Denton's arrival, the argument, Mirabel's refusal, and Denton's departure. He did not waver. Did you see Miss Prescott approach Mr. Denton or his horse? The lawyer asked. No. Did you see her take anything? No. The lawyer smiled. But you were not inside the house during the initial conversation. You could not have seen everything. Mercer's gaze did not shift. I saw enough. The lawyer sat. The marshal called Mirabel. She told her story clearly, her voice steady despite the weight of every eye in the room. When she finished, the lawyer stood. Miss Prescott, is it true your father owes my client's employer a significant sum? Yes. And is it true that your father signed a contract agreeing to your engagement to settle that debt? Under duress? Yes. The lawyer's smile widened. So you had motive to steal, to prevent the marriage and delay the debt. Mirabel's jaw tightened. I had motive to refuse, not to steal. The lawyer turned to the judge. Your Honor, this young woman is desperate. Her family is bankrupt. She held a weapon on my client. It is entirely plausible she took the money in a moment of panic. The judge looked at Mirabel. Do you have any proof you did not take the money? Mirabel's heart sank. How do you prove a negative? Then her father stood in the back of the room. Your Honor, I have something to say. The judge gestured. Approach. Mirabel's father walked to the front, his face ashen. He took the stand. The lawyer watched him like a hawk. State your name. Jonathan Prescott. You are the defendant's father? Yes. Did you witness the event in question? Yes. And did you see your daughter take money from Mr. Denton? He hesitated. No. The lawyer leaned in. But you were in the house. You could not see everything that happened outside. I saw enough. My daughter did not take anything. Denton is lying to force the marriage. The room erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. Order. The lawyer's face flushed. Your Honor, this witness is biased. The judge looked at Jonathan. Why should I believe you? Jonathan met his eyes. Because I signed that contract to save my land. But I will not let my daughter be destroyed to cover my mistakes. Denton never had any money stolen. He is using this court to control her. The judge studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to Denton. Mr. Denton, do you have any physical evidence of this theft? Witnesses other than yourself? Denton's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client's word should be sufficient. The judge's expression hardened. In a criminal case, it is not. Case dismissed for lack of evidence. The gavel fell. Mirabel's knees went weak. Mercer caught her elbow, steadying her. Denton stood, his face red with fury. He stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer following. The marshal approached. You are clear, miss. But Denton will not let this go. Mirabel nodded. I know. Outside, the winter sun was blinding. Mirabel's father stood on the courthouse steps, his shoulders slumped. Mirabel walked over to him. Thank you, she said quietly. He looked at her, his eyes wet. I should have said no from the start. She did not answer. Mercer joined them, his presence solid and calm. Her father glanced at him, then back at Mirabel. You chose him. It was not a question. Mirabel nodded. I did. Her father sighed. Then I hope he is worth it. Mercer met his gaze. I will be. They rode back to High Wind Ranch in silence. The sky was clear and cold, the prairie endless. Mirabel felt the weight of the day lifting, replaced by something fragile and new. Hope. But hope was fragile. 3 days later, a fire broke out in the barn. Mirabel woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of horses screaming. She ran outside in her nightgown, her feet bare on the frozen ground. Flames roared from the barn, orange and vicious against the black sky. Mercer and the other ranch hands were already there, hauling buckets of water from the trough, throwing them uselessly at the inferno. Mirabel ran to the corral and threw open the gate, driving the panicked horses out into the night. Mercer grabbed her arm. Get back. The roof is going. She pulled away. There are tools in there. Saddles. Everything. Mirabel. Get back. The roof collapsed with a roar, sending sparks spiraling into the sky. Mirabel stood and watched everything burn. Her father staggered out of the house, his face pale. Who did this? Mercer's jaw was tight. Calloway. Mirabel turned to him. How do you know? Because this is what he does. You embarrassed him in court. This is the answer. The fire burned until dawn. When the sun rose, the barn was a blackened skeleton, smoking and ruined. Mirabel walked through the ashes, her heart numb. The saddles were gone. The tools, the feed, everything they needed to survive the winter. Her father sat on the porch steps, his head in his hands. We are finished. Mirabel sat beside him. No. We rebuild. With what money? She did not have an answer. Mercer approached, his face grim. I am going into town to talk to the marshal. Mirabel stood. I am coming with you. They rode into Iron Prairie under a gray sky. The federal office was locked. A note pinned to the door read, Called to Cheyenne. Back in 2 weeks. Mirabel's chest tightened. 2 weeks. Mercer tore down the note. We do not have 2 weeks. Then what do we do? He looked at her, his expression hard. We go to Cheyenne ourselves. We talk to the governor. We make noise until someone listens. Mirabel nodded. When do we leave? Now. They returned to High Wind Ranch long enough to pack supplies and tell her father. He did not argue. He looked too broken to fight. Mercer saddled 2 horses and they rode west into the mountains. The journey to Cheyenne took 4 days. They rode hard, stopping only to rest the horses and eat cold rations. At night, they huddled by small fires, the cold pressing close. Mercer kept watch while Mirabel slept, and she woke to find him still awake, his eyes on the dark horizon. On the 3rd night, she sat beside him by the fire. You do not sleep much. He shrugged. Old habit. From working for Calloway? He nodded. You learn to stay alert. She studied his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. Are you afraid he will find us? He glanced at her. He already knows where we are. But he will not stop us before we reach Cheyenne. Too public. And after? Mercer's expression darkened. After, we see if the law means anything. They reached Cheyenne on the morning of the 4th day. The city was bustling, crowded with freight wagons, soldiers, and businessmen. Mirabel felt small and out of place, but Mercer moved through the streets with purpose. They found the governor's office, a grand building with marble steps. Inside, a clerk looked them over with disdain. "Do you have an appointment?" Mercer leaned on the desk. "We need to see the governor. It is urgent. Everyone's business is urgent. Come back next month." Mercer's voice dropped. "Tell him it is about Calloway and land fraud and arson. He will want to hear it." The clerk hesitated, then disappeared into a back room. 10 minutes later, he returned. "The governor will see you." 5 minutes. They followed him into a wood-paneled office. The governor, a broad man with graying hair, sat behind a massive desk. He gestured to chairs. "Speak." Mirabel told the story. The debt, the contract, the fire. Mercer added details about Calloway's operations, his coercion tactics, his network of corrupt officials. The governor listened without interruption. When they finished, he leaned back. "You are accusing one of the wealthiest men in the territory of arson and fraud." "Yes, sir," Mirabel said. "Do you have proof?" "Witnesses." The federal marshal was investigating before he was called away. The governor drummed his fingers on the desk. "Calloway is powerful. If I move against him without ironclad evidence, he will bury me politically." Mercer leaned forward. "If you do not move against him, he will keep destroying people. How many families have to lose everything before it matters?" The governor's gaze sharpened. "You worked for him, did you not?" Mercer did not flinch. "I did. That is how I know what he is." The governor studied him. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I walked away. And because I am here risking everything to stop him." The governor was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled a sheet of paper from a drawer and wrote quickly. "This is an order for a full territorial investigation into Calloway's business practices. I am sending it to the federal marshal and the circuit judge. If you are telling the truth, this will give you protection. If you are lying, it will destroy you." He handed the paper to Mirabel. "Thank you, sir. Do not thank me yet. Calloway will fight this with everything he has. You need to be ready." They left the office and stood on the marble steps, the city noise swirling around them. Mirabel held the order like a lifeline. "We did it," she said. Mercer shook his head. "We started it. Now we finish it." They rode back toward Iron Prairie, the order tucked safely in Mirabel's coat. But on the second day, a rider intercepted them, one of Calloway's men, cold-eyed and armed. "Calloway wants to talk. Now." Mercer's hand went to his belt. "We are not interested." The man smiled. "He thought you might say that." So he sent a message. "If you do not come, he burns down the Prescott house. With your father inside." Mirabel's breath stopped. Mercer's jaw went tight. "Where?" "Old freight station. 2 miles north." "Alone?" Mercer looked at Mirabel. "You stay here." "No. I am coming." "Mirabel, this is a trap. Then we spring it together." They rode north. The freight station loomed against the gray sky, a sprawling structure of weathered wood and rusted iron. Calloway waited in the center of the yard, flanked by 6 armed men. He was older than Mirabel expected, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, dressed in an expensive coat. "Miss Prescott." Keen. I hear you have been busy. Mirabelle dismounted. Let my father go. Calloway smiled. Your father is fine. For now. But you have caused me considerable trouble. I do not appreciate trouble. Mercer stepped forward. You caused your own trouble. We are just making it public. Calloway's smile faded. You were always self-righteous, Keen. Even when you worked for me. That is why I let you go. You were not worth the hassle. But now you have become a problem. He gestured. Two of his men stepped forward, rifles raised. Mirabelle's pulse hammered. So here's my offer, Calloway said. You give me that paper from the governor. You marry Denton. Your father's debt is forgiven. Everyone walks away. And if I refuse, then your father dies. Your ranch burns. And you spend the rest of your life wondering if it was worth it. Mirabelle met his eyes. It is worth it. Calloway's expression hardened. Then you are a fool. He raised his hand. The rifles clicked. Mercer moved, fast and fluid, drawing a pistol Mirabelle had not known he carried. The yard exploded into chaos. Shots rang out. Mirabelle dropped behind a wagon, her heart racing. Mercer fired twice, dropping one of Calloway's men. The others scattered, taking cover. Calloway ran toward the station building. Mirabelle crawled to Mercer. Are you hit? No. You? No. Stay down. He fired again. Another man fell. But Calloway's men were closing in, circling the wagon. Mirabelle looked around desperately. Then she saw it. A lantern, hanging from a post near a stack of crates, marked kerosene. She grabbed Mercer's arm. The kerosene. If we light it, they will have to pull back. Or we all go up. Better than dying here. Mercer looked at her. Something fierce and proud in his eyes. All right. On three, they moved together. Mercer laid down, covering fire, while Mirabelle ran to the post, grabbed the lantern, and hurled it at the crates. Glass shattered. Flames roared up, fast and hungry. Calloway's men shouted and fell back. Mercer grabbed Mirabelle's hand, and they ran for the horses. Behind them, the freight station erupted in fire. They mounted and rode hard, the heat at their backs. Shots followed them, but the distance grew. They did not stop until the station was a distant orange glow against the sky. Mirabelle leaned over her horse's neck, gasping. Mercer pulled up beside her, his face blackened with soot. You all right? She nodded, though her hands shook. Did we just kill Calloway? Mercer looked back. I do not know. But we bought time. They rode through the night, pushing the horses to their limits. By dawn, they reached Iron Prairie. The town was quiet, the streets empty. They went straight to the federal office. The marshal was back, standing on the steps with a telegram in his hand. Miss Prescott. Keen. I heard about Cheyenne. Mirabelle dismounted and handed him the governor's order. He read it, his expression grim. This changes things. Calloway is under investigation. But he is also out for blood. You need protection. We need my father, Mirabelle said. Calloway threatened to kill him. The marshal nodded. I will send men to your ranch. In the meantime, you stay here, in town, where I can see you. They spent the next 3 days in a boarding house, waiting. The marshal brought news. Calloway had survived the fire. He was lawyering up, denying everything. But the investigation was moving forward. Witnesses were coming forward. The tide was turning. On the fourth day, the circuit judge returned. He called a hearing. Public. Mandatory. The courthouse was packed. Calloway sat at the front, flanked by lawyers. Denton was conspicuously absent. The judge took his seat and banged the gavel. We are here to address multiple complaints against Mr. Calloway regarding land fraud, coercion, and arson. Testimony will be heard from all parties. Proceed. The marshal stood. Your Honor, I have affidavits from 12 families detailing coerced contracts, fraudulent foreclosures, and threats of violence. I also have testimony from Mercer Keene, former employee of Mr. Calloway, regarding his business practices. Calloway's lawyer stood. Your Honor, these are disgruntled debtors and a disloyal ex-employee. None of this is credible. The judge looked at Mercer. Mr. Keene, approach. Mercer took the stand. He spoke calmly, methodically, detailing everything he had seen during his time working for Calloway. The threats, the violence, the deliberate manipulation of contracts. The room was silent. When he finished, the judge turned to Calloway. Mr. Calloway, do you wish to respond? Calloway stood, his face calm. Your Honor, I am a businessman. I operate within the law. If some of my employees overstepped, that is regrettable. But I am not responsible for their actions. The judge's expression was unreadable. Then I am ordering a full audit of your business holdings and contracts. Until that audit is complete, all foreclosure actions are suspended. Court adjourned. The gavel fell. Calloway's face went white. Mirabelle felt a weight lift from her chest. Mercer took her hand. It is not over, he said quietly. But it is a start. Weeks passed. The audit dragged on. Calloway's empire began to crack. Contracts were voided. Foreclosures reversed. Families returned to their land. Mirabelle and Mercer testified twice more, each time facing Calloway's lawyers, each time holding firm. Through it all, Mirabelle's father worked to rebuild the barn. Slowly, with borrowed tools and the help of neighbors, the frame went up. Mirabelle carried mail through snow and wind, and Mercer rode the fence lines, mending what had broken. One evening in late March, Mercer found Mirabelle on the porch, watching the sunset. The air was warmer now, carrying the promise of spring. He sat beside her. The marshal sent word. Calloway is being charged. Criminal fraud. Extortion. He is going to prison. Mirabelle exhaled slowly. It is really over. Mercer took her hand. For him, not for us. She looked at him. What do you mean? He turned to face her fully. I mean, I want to stay. Here. With you. If you will have me. Mirabelle's throat tightened. You want to stay on the ranch? I want to marry you. If you will say yes. She stared at him, her pulse racing. You are serious. I have never been more serious about anything. She thought about everything they had been through. The danger, the fear, the fire. And through it all, he had been steady, unshakable, real. Yes, she said. I will marry you. He kissed her. slow and sure, and the world fell away. When they broke apart, her father stood in the doorway, a faint smile on his tired face. "I suppose I should start planning a wedding." Mirabel laughed, breathless and surprised. "I suppose you should." The wedding was small. Just the town, the neighbors, and the marshal, who gave a short toast about justice and second chances. Mirabel wore a simple white dress with lace at the cuffs, and Mercer wore a clean shirt and his best coat. They stood in the church and said their vows, and when the preacher pronounced them married, the room erupted in applause. Afterward, they stood outside in the spring sun, surrounded by well-wishers. Her father shook Mercer's hand, his eyes wet. "You take care of her." Mercer nodded. "I will." They rode back to High Wind Ranch as the sun set, the sky painted in shades of gold and pink. The new barn stood solid and clean, its frame proud against the horizon. Inside the house, a fire crackled in the hearth. Mirabel turned to Mercer, her heart full. "I never thought I would be here." He pulled her close. "Neither did I." She kissed him, and the future stretched before them, uncertain, but theirs. Together, spring turned to summer. The ranch flourished. Cattle grazed on green grass, and the fields filled with wildflowers. Mirabel still carried the mail, and Mercer worked the land, but now they worked together, building something that was theirs. One evening, Mirabel stood in the doorway of the barn, watching Mercer repair a fence. The sun hung low, painting everything gold. He looked up and caught her watching, and smiled. "What?" She walked over to him. "Just thinking." "About?" "About how much has changed." He set down his tools and pulled her into his arms. "For the better?" She looked up at him, her heart full. "Always." He kissed her, and the prairie wind carried the scent of sage and summer. Somewhere a hawk cried. The world was wide and wild, and theirs. Years later, when people in Iron Prairie told the story, they always started the same way. They said Mirabel Prescott held a rifle on the man her father tried to sell her to. They said Mercer Keene stepped in when no one else would. They said love and courage could beat even the most powerful man in the territory. And they were right. But what they did not say was how hard it had been. How many nights Mirabel woke up shaking, afraid Calloway would come back. How many times Mercer stared at the horizon, waiting for the past to catch up. How many small battles they fought, day after day, to hold on to what they had built. What they did not say was that love was not a single grand gesture. It was 1,000 small choices. To stay when leaving was easier. To fight when surrender was safer. To trust when trust was terrifying. Mirabel stood on the porch of High Wind Ranch, her hand resting on her rounded belly, and watched Mercer ride in from the northern pasture. He swung down from the saddle and climbed the steps, his face wind-burned and smiling. "How are you feeling?" "Tired." "Happy." He kissed her forehead. "Good combination." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. This was what she had fought for. Not just survival, not just freedom, but this. A life built on choice and trust and love that lasted. The sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in fire. Mercer wrapped his arms around her, and they stood together, watching the world turn gold. "I love you," she said quietly. He kissed the top of her head. "I love you too." always. The wind carried the scent of sage and spring rain. Somewhere, a coyote called. The stars began to appear, one by one, filling the vast sky. And in the doorway of Highwind Ranch, Mirabelle and Mercer stood together, holding the future they had fought for. And finally, home.